Alright everyone, we start off today with economic news. I'm seeing a few mentions even in the legacy media now that we're probably headed towards a recession. Now, there were some pussyfooting around, half-assed, half-hearted criticisms of Bidenomics even many moons ago from some of the missing link media or marginal legacy media other than like Fox. And that's for partisan purposes. That's so they can make money. And they prefaced basically something that was far worse. So first they said, well, yeah, the inflation will probably keep rising, but it'll ease back down. We can weather it. We can deal with it. Maybe 5% or something. It's transitory and stuff. And each time they pussyfooted around, it got worse. You remember that? It's called the entire last year and several months of the Beijing-Biden stewardship. The problem is then when you see Bloomberg and a few other financial institutions saying, hey, we're probably going to end up in a bit of a recession here at some point due to the Fed's policies, the inversion of bond yields, and all of these other things that really they know a limited amount about more than the general public. That means it's probably going to be worse. If they're saying, well, we'll probably end up in a bit of a recession, it should clear up in no time. We'll be in a recession for a few quarters. It's going to suck, but don't worry. It sounds an awful lot like that same coverage of inflation or of any other economic thing, where you find out over and over it's actually worse than was speculated. It's not real. Okay, it's real, but it's really mild. Okay, it's more than mild, but it's transitory. Okay, well, just fucking deal with it and eat your lentils. That was the way the legacy media circumvented having to give full blame to the poorness, the wreck that is the Biden economy, and did it for more than a year so far. They're still attempting to do it now. We're going to get new inflation data, of course, next month for March. It is expected to be higher than it was prior. It may be worse than expected. I don't know exactly how many tenths of a point they're expecting it to go up, but I expect there's a pretty good chance it'll be higher than that. It'll probably accelerate further and further. By the way, the cat is trying to distract me. I'll do my best to not get distracted. I think a Biden recession will be worse. Number one, I think it'll be longer lasting than people are predicting. And by the way, you should stock up, if you have the ability to do so, on the necessities that you need. Prices will soar this summer, this growing season. Russia's throttling fertilizer shipments. It's a big problem. You've got fuel issues. You have massive gas prices. They've ticked down. I saw an I think not a WCAX actually was covering it, I think, the other day. Oh, well, gas is down 8 cents from its peak in the last couple of weeks. Yay! Biden reduced the massively inflated gas price by 8 cents by freeing up reserves that we should not have even freed up because we shouldn't fucking bother. They're just trying to keep the price low enough so that you don't end up with outright stagflation. The problem is that prices are still rising. Part of it's due to the lack of supply for increased demand because of lockdowns destroying aspects of the industrial economy, especially within shipping and manufacturing. That's number one. Number two is the funny money printing, and Biden is proposing massive increases in the budget, of course, that's being proposed actually right now. We're talking trillions of extra dollars of pork barrel spending that won't actually create a single job. It won't help anyone who's in poverty. It's the usual bullshit. It's sort of like what Obama did. We need to bail out these companies or else everyone's portfolios will dry up and the economy will die. Oh yeah, it includes billions in golden parachutes for the corporate heads who helped cause the speculative crisis that the government helped preface in the first place in the housing market, namely Bill Clinton. How interesting. The people who donated to your campaigns got a lot of money. They didn't lose anything. They got to buy a couple more McMansions, actually. I think that a Biden recession might slip deeper than just a recession, in fact, and right on the edge of what one could call a depression. So you'd have high unemployment. I think it's coming. Not maybe out of control inflation, but significant amounts of inflation, maybe into the double-digit range. We're technically already there under the old measurements. I think someone explained that the real inflation would be closer to 20% right now, 15-20% if they were using the measurements that used to be used for inflation back in the 80s and 90s. Well, if those numbers were out, then Biden's approval would probably be under 20% at the moment, if people knew how bad it was. The problem is that at some point, there's less demand as well. So the supply and demand have both diminished. You've effectively diminished the economy through lockdownerism and that initial inflation. Attempting to control the inflation may destroy jobs. Not controlling the inflation probably destroys jobs too. And you enter a downward spiral in which your economy has to be totally reset. And this has happened before, by the way, in world history, many, many times to different nations. At some point, though, if there's no competence, if the government overextends and just tries to plug all the holes in the dam and, they run out of fingers, things get worse and worse. You end up potentially with a depression. If the government does nothing, likewise, you would expect the same thing, although I believe it would be shorter term because a truly free market can correct faster. That would require what Trump did, mass deregulation, lowering taxes. Biden's going in the other direction. His first acts as president re-regulating the energy industry, leading to part of the crisis that we see now. It is the Biden price hikes, not the Putin price hikes. Attacking the energy industry and then saying effectively, well, we're going to raise taxes. Now, he prefaces that by declaring that that'll only affect the rich. But we know that that's not the case because that's not the way the tax code works. It's not, we upped the final bracket by 10%, left everyone else's alone. Yet that's not going to work economically. You'll find a lot of people that are riding that margin would take a slight pay cut. You'd end up destroying GDP actually in the process. They deal with other non-taxable kickbacks or start offshoring their money. Yeah, when the upper middle class starts stashing cash in Switzerland or the Cayman Islands, then you know that your own economy is junk. Does anyone believe, and here's why I'm pessimistic about the intermediate term economy for the U.S. and therefore, by the way, for the whole world, because it's so interconnected. Biden is not competent. The people behind him that wield the real power, they don't appear to be competent either. Because if they were competent, this wouldn't be happening, unless I assume malevolence, in which case they're actively attempting to make this sort of thing happen to push the Great Reset globalist lie. Either way, you end up with the same end result. Dumb Biden, dumb cabal, or evil cabal behind dumb Biden. All three would be fundamentally causing the same issue, and there'd be no reason to fix the economy, either because you can't, you're too fucking stupid to fix the economy, or because you don't want to in the first place. So I think a recession, I'd say there's a better than 50-50 chance of at least a moderate recession for, let's say, in the next 6 months, continuing for some time thereafter. By the way, that's terrible for the Dems in the midterms, and the fact that the term is even being used by Bloomberg, of all groups. Again, Bloomberg was reporting on this. It's probably still on their news aggregator, although I didn't grab the link. Sorry about that. Archived, of course, not, because it's not there. That term is a loaded term. A lot of people that don't even know what it means still fear it, because they've been taught to fear it because recession bad. Now, that's not wrong, although it's an oversimplification. They are literally taking orders from the White House with regards to economic news, and I'm sure that Bloomberg is part of that. They're a big legacy media organization. So if they're even speculating the possibility of a recession, I'll talk about how little confidence they must have in the Biden economy. Obviously, someone said, hey, I'd rather be right and be the first one to use that term. So then later on, I'll be getting calls from people congratulating me and offering me a bouquet of flowers because, they pulled all their stocks out early or something. That recession, better than 50-50 chance. As far as slipping deeper, so on the cusp of a Great Depression style situation. Well, thankfully, it's not that likely. The problem is it's possible. Now, that's not something that I would have guessed even in bad economic times before. Of course, we had the Great Recession. We had a mini recession, actually, because of lockdowns at the outset of COVID. So we've had two, or actually I think 3 or 4, technically, in my lifetime, 2 or 3 of which I can actually remember. And of course, the mini recession, a little bit different than what we saw, for half of the 2010s. On what scale this recession will be is definitely up for debate. Before, though, I never would have guessed depression because, I mean, all the markers weren't there. The problem is that you now also have a lack of competence in D.C. and or outright malevolence trying to cause economic issues for socio-political purposes. In either of these cases, it's a deviation. Certainly it's not Trump. Trump's fiscal policies were sound. Obama used the Great Recession as a way to give billions in kickbacks to donors, but ultimately was at least capable of stabilizing the economy. There was a lot of pain there for a whole fucking half a decade, but it never worsened beyond that initial collapse. The dot-com bubble bursting, outset of the Bush administration. The dot-com bubble collapses. A lot of people lose a hell of a lot of money. Even George W. did better with economics than Joe Biden has managed to do in a single year. We've never seen this much economic damage done so quickly since the Great Depression. That's the last time that I know of that it was this rapid. Even under Carter, I think it took him a little bit longer. I think he was there for a couple of years and things were in the doldrums because you were in the fucking 1970s, but people generally weren't in bread lines. I expect that this time around there'll be lentil lines. That's about all. Peace out.